Well, good morning, and I'd like to say I'm also very excited to see so many people here for this type of talk when we're here for something that's about poetry and cowboys, and everybody's here now to talk about what I like to do, which is work with streams and wetlands. And because it's the Elko Cowboy Poetry Festival, and I told my office that I was going to be presenting, they said, well, you've got to do a poem. I said, okay, well, find me one. And they said, no, you've got to write one. So I'm going to try my hand, and because all the good poets recite their poetry is the trend that I'm seeing, I'm going to try to do it from memory, so bear with me if I trip up. I went for a walk one day, chasing a thundercloud, and happened upon a stream in flood. The banks were full, and the willows were bent, but nowhere did I see any mud. I looked all around, and I did see some cows, but on a hill they were chewing their cud. Now, some people say that grazing is a nuisance when cows get to pulling up grass. On a hot summer day, a cool meadow they'll find and do nothing but eat and pass gas. But if your cattle are stubborn and ignore your permit, Uncle Sam will be riding your, well, you know. When push comes to shove, no matter the mess, you cannot go blaming the heifer. If she takes her time before she does harm, a cowboy should go out and get her. The moral of the story, if you feel so inclined, is that good ranchers know they can do better. Thank you. All right, got the butterflies going and everything. So Robin talked about creeks and communities, and one of the things that Nevada Creeks and Communities does a lot is teach and try to introduce people to this idea of proper functioning condition. So what is proper functioning condition? Before I answer that, I want to show you all a set of photos of stream systems in varying states of health and functionality. And each of these slides is going to be up for only a few seconds, but I want you to do your best to think about sort of how the picture makes you feel, how you would describe it, what you think about that stream. So we'll take a couple seconds and look at these. And I will admit I have no idea where these streams are. I pulled these all from Google. All right. So now that we've kind of looked at those, think about which of those streams you think maybe looked good, which ones you think looked bad. Think about how you would describe those streams to other people, and think if someone else was trying to describe that stream to you, would you be able to keep up with what they were saying and understand what they were describing based on how they saw those streams? So we talk about proper functioning condition. We shorten it to PFC, and there are some other acronyms for PFC, but we're using PFC as a proper functioning condition. And it means several things to us. And arguably, the most important function that it serves is that of a communication tool. PFC provides a common language for people of varying backgrounds to get together and talk about both the good things and the bad things on streams and wetlands and springs. And it puts us on the same playing field so that we all know what the other is talking about. Instead of saying something like, man, those stream banks are ugly, we may say something like, there's not adequate vegetation to resist erosion, as nerdy as that sounds, but then we all know what we're talking about. Instead of saying something like, man, that meadow has been ruined, we may say something like, well, the surface drainage patterns of that meadow have been altered. And then both sides of the conversation know what the issue actually is and what we may need to do to address that. Secondly, PFC is a term that we use for an actual assessment. Land stewards of all stripes can learn the protocol, learn the indicators, and then go out on the ground and do PFC or do a PFC assessment. When done right, PFC is both interdisciplinary and consistent. PFC assessments are strongest when they're done by a team of multiple backgrounds, including hydrology, soils, vegetation, local land use and history knowledge, rangeland management, wildlife and fisheries biology, and those aren't all required, but the broader the background you can get, the better. And ensuring that the core of your team is familiar with regional landscape or regional habitat types is very important to a strong assessment. And by doing that, we make sure that moving from site to site or from day to day, the assessments done by a team or by two teams are going to be seeing the same sorts of good things or bad things. And lastly, PFC is a starting point. As I mentioned, it's an assessment. It's not really intended to be a monitoring tool to show change from season to season or year to year. You go out, you do PFC, and you get an idea of where your site is currently in regard to condition and function. And that gives you, as I said, sort of a common language to start to talk about management changes that may be needed and to help set up a monitoring protocol. So what things do you really need to go out and measure to see changes if you change management? So how does it work? Step one, you need to determine a site's potential. I'm sure some of us have stood in front of the mirror and thought, what would I look like if I was in better shape? And that's essentially what we do for these streams and these wetlands. We get on site, we use our local knowledge, and we say, if this site was whipped into shape, what would it look like? And that gives us the basis to compare what it looks like today versus what we think it should look like. And just like no two of you would look exactly the same standing in front of a mirror, no two streams and no two wetlands are going to look exactly the same either. Step two, we assess indicators. We go through a number of questions regarding a number of indicators, and we answer yes or no about the site. The questions are set up such that yes answers are indicating that the site is functioning. A no answer indicates that the site is either not functioning or at risk of losing some function. And then lastly, we determine condition. After we've gone through the indicators and we've done our best to document the site's condition through narratives and photos, the team comes together in a consensus to decide how that site is actually doing. And we describe sites as either being in a functioning at risk, or a non-functional condition. And while that agreement at that team or by that team is not always easy, having the team there is critical to ensuring that any issues that are out there that may be seen are discussed and addressed, and making sure that all of those discussions or disagreements or points of contention are documented makes for a much stronger assessment. So what are the indicators that we actually look like? There are people who spend semesters and years learning how streams and wetlands work. When we teach our PFC class here in Nevada with the Creeks and Penews team, we do it in about 2 days. I've got about a minute to run through them with you. We break our indicators down into 3 general categories. The first is water or hydrology. Water is what shapes the landscape and the habitats that we're assessing, and it's what sustains the vegetation that provide myriad values and functions for the site. We try to assess whether or not water is moving through the landscape the way we would expect it to in a natural condition, how that water is connected to the adjoining habitats, and whether or not sites upstream are impacting our site. Next is plants or vegetation. Plants are key to helping reduce erosion. They provide forage for livestock and wildlife, and they help improve water quality. We take a look at whether or not we have enough of the right plants in the right places and whether or not those plants are reproducing at the right rate. And then soils or geomorphology. Every stream moves over time, and every stream changes shape a little bit over time, and every stream moves sediment. And no two streams do those two things at the same rate. So we need to take a look at whether or not what's going on today at the site, whether or not the stream is moving across the landscape, whether or not it's changing shape, and whether or not it's receiving and moving the amount of sediment that we would expect to see under natural conditions. And then once we've gone through all those indicators, as I said, we come up with a general consensus among the team as to what the overall condition is for the site. I can tell that everybody is super excited about what I just went through. And you all are itching to learn more, right? So the Nevada Creeks and Communities team sets up several trainings every year, and they're for basically everybody, all backgrounds, all skill levels. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a degree in hydrology or rangeland management. You don't have to be a rancher. We do volunteers, professionals, federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies. Everybody's welcome to come and learn about what we look at when we do these assessments. If you're interested in being a part of one of those trainings, you can connect with us on Facebook to keep up with the schedule. If you're interested in more specific information or if you want to get added to our mailing list, please email Sherm Swanson out of UNR. He's sort of the head honcho for our group here in Nevada. And if you guys are outside of Nevada and want to participate more in Creeks and Communities type functions or learn more about PFC, I encourage you to get a hold of the National Riparian Service Team. They're sort of the umbrella group of folks who help write these protocols and help implement them on the ground. They can put you in touch with either a local Creeks and Communities group or help you set one up or help set up trainings for your area. And that's it for me.